Hi, welcome back to the Benchmarkers Rugby Show. I'm one of your co-hosts. My name is Kumbi. I am a data scientist, but most importantly for these videos, I am a rugby fan, and I'm joined by my co-host.
Hey guys, my name is Nyasha. I too am a data scientist. Today we'll be adding another qualification day later on in the episode as we
Okay,
look at the numbers. But
right.
I bring in the AI stats analysis, crunch the numbers, present them, and, with Kumbi's expertise and the number crunching, we think we make the perfect pairing.
Right,
So
right.
Kumbi, the big one.
Rugby World Cup Final. Actually, you know what? As I'm saying Rugby World Cup Final, it's actually just hit me that South Africa, New Zealand, that the Rugby World Cup is this weekend. So obviously, this is the biggest game of the year, biggest game of the 4-year cycle, and not only that, we get the biggest rivalry, the two biggest teams in rugby meeting in the
Yeah.
World Cup final for the second time. Right? Obviously, they met in that massive 1995 World Cup final. I think it was at Ellis Park. We all knew the implications of that final and whatnot, and they meet yet again, right? So that's going to be it's going to be a massive weekend. Obviously, we're divided. We are very South African adjacent, so we've got a lot of people who support the Springboks, and then you've got a lot of people like myself who like the All Blacks as well. So yeah, it's a very interesting. We're going into a very interesting weekend.
Okay. No, I mean,
Right.
it's nice of you to come out the closet by yourself.
Okay, so we're just going to start with. So obviously, we usually do AI models and all that stuff. We talk about the data, yes, and we are going to talk about the data, of course, right? Because
Yeah.
it's not an analytics channel if we don't talk about the data. But
Yeah,
really, because
I wouldn't have a job if we didn't talk about
yeah,
the
right.
data. So I always need to squeeze it in there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly right. So now, but because this is a World Cup final, right? AI models, all these predictions, we can make as many predictions as we want, but we don't, like, this is different, right? So we're just going to do this a little bit differently. This is why the video is coming to you a little bit later than usual. So we're going to talk about, talk about the lineups. We're going to talk about what we expect from the game, the big talking points, and then we're just going to talk about the data and some of the matchups going into the games, right? So let's get straight in to the lineup. So we're just going to start with New Zealand because New Zealand really is just steady as steady as she goes, as they say. So you still have De Groot, Taylor, Tyrell Lomax in the front row. No changes there. There's no changes in the entire forward pack actually. Scott Barrett, Brody Italic at lock, which means Sam Whitelock playing his last game is coming off the bench. Shannon Frizzell, Sam Kane, Ardie Savea, that's your loose trio once again, steady as she goes. Aaron Smith, Richie Mwanga, that's your 9-10. Jordy Barrett and Rico Ioane are your centre pairing, and then Mark Talia, who's been preferred to over Leicester Fainga'anuku, is at the left wing. Will Jordan, who equaled the try scoring record in the last game against Argentina, is on the right wing, and then you've got experience coming off the back in Bowden Barrett, right? So that's normal, that's usual, right? So that's there's nothing much to talk about there, right? And just to finish off with the All Blacks, we're just going to talk about the bench as well, right? We've got Samisoni Takiaho, preferred over Dane Coles, which is quite interesting because Coles, the throwing, that's been a bit of a talking point. It's going to be interesting to see how Samisoni goes. But then you've got Tamaiti Williams and Nipo Laulala coming off the bench, right? So that means Nipo is now playing ahead of Fletcher Newell, which is quite interesting because obviously the biggest talking point coming into this is going to be the scrum, and we're just going to go into that as we talk about the South African lineup as well. But your number 18 is going to be crucial because that's the person who's going to go up against the Ox, right? So Ox and Chair has been very crucial in South Africa getting to this point, right?
Yeah.
So they've now preferred Nipo Lalalo, who's experienced, over Fletcher Newell. I think Fletcher Newell has been really good at scrum time, so that's a very interesting selection right there, but we'll see how it plays out. And then, so New Zealand has a little bit of a bomb squad. You've got 150, I think it's 150, 253 tests coming off the bench, and Sam Whitelock at number 19. Number 20, you've got Dalton Papali'i, and then Finley Christie, who, to be honest, in my opinion, I don't think he's probably going to play, but, obviously you still need number 9 cover at the 9 position.
Yeah.
If you're the All Blacks, but not really the Springboks. And then you've got Damien McKenzie and Antoinette Brown, once again steady, right? So that's New Zealand. New Zealand, there's not too many surprises going in there. And then if we shift over to South Africa, now that's been a massive talking point because obviously they've decided to go with a 7-1 split, right?
Yeah.
So with their forward pack, just going through the forward pack very quickly, that hasn't changed either. Their starting forward pack: Stephen Kitshoff, Mbodambi, Malherbe, that's your front row. It's a bit Mostert, that's a nice pairing of defense and attack. That's your second row. Captain Fantastic is number 6.
Yep.
Peter Stiff, Dwayne Vermeulen is number 8, right? And then you've got Faf de Klerk coming in. So we spoke about how, Reinach had made some mistakes. They took him more for Faf de Klerk. So now Reinach is actually completely out of the 23. Andre Pollard now, this is one of the biggest ones, right? So we've been talking about, we've made a big thing about the conversions, the kicking and all that stuff. So now they've made the decision to bring in Andre Pollard to start, but they haven't just pushed Manny Lebok to the bench. They've actually axed him from the 23 completely, which, I think is very understandable given the stage. I think Lebok's done really well so far, but now we need experience and composure.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. Nyasha really agrees with this. I think he's been pushing the Pollard agenda for a minute now. Right, okay. Yeah. And then the rest of the backline really is unchanged, right? So you've got Damien Dialendi, Jesse Creel. That's your center combination. Your back three is going to be Colby, Arendse, and Willemse coming off the back. It's interesting that Willemse, out of the guys who were substituted after mistakes, Willemse is the only guy who stayed this week. Right. Now, the 7-1 split on the bench, right? Essentially, you've got 7 forwards and 1 backline, which means Dion Free comes off his hooker replacement, but really, I don't think he's probably going to come in as hooker. He's probably going to come in as a flank. You've got your 2 forwards off the bench are Ox and Che, but instead of number 18 bringing in Vincent Koch, they're actually going with Trevor Nyakane, which means that just shows clear intent. They're going for the scrum, right? That's going to be their main target. Jean Klein, number 19 with R.K. Snyman. That means you're bringing on Beef at the second row. Quagga Smith, massive ball carrier, massive workload. At number 21, Jasper Visa, number 22. And then you only have 1 backline player, which is Vili Leroux. That means there's no out-and-out number 9 cover, right? Faf de Klerk, hopefully he doesn't get injured, but he's going to need to play the 480. You don't really have specialist number 10 cover. Maybe Willemse is your cover number 10, but they'll hope that Andre Pollard can play the 80 minutes as well. So I think here South Africa's taken a clear gamble. I think from looking at the lineups, we can tell what their strategy is. Set piece, right? So they want to win the scrum time. That's why New Zealand has reacted and brought in Daulala, because essentially the most, I think, Ox, you don't want to really, I think if he had been nominated for Player of the Year, I wouldn't have been shocked, because he's basically won that quarterfinal and semi-final. So it's going to be very crucial how they can deal with that from the 45th to the 60th minute, how when the reinforcement, that bomb squad comes in, how are they going to react to that? So that's going to be very, very interesting. So obviously with the Springboks, they're going for the scrum. The All Blacks, they're going to need to weather that storm. They didn't do that really well in the game that they played at Twickenham just before when they lost in a record loss. But essentially, once your scrum collapses, just like what happened in the first game when De Groot got a penalty in the very first scrum, no reset, no nothing. Once you get those, you have to avoid penalties, you have to avoid knock-ons, you have to avoid kicking too long and then letting them take the mark. You basically have to play a perfect game, and that's what New Zealand is going to do. It's the first and foremost thing that they need to do is to weather that storm at the forward pack, and then from there, I think if they can win that forward, not necessarily win the forward battle, but at least match up almost with their forwards, and then I think New Zealand has a better backline, not really more experienced, but I think they are more comfortable playing in their backline and so on. But it's a forward matchup, right? So that's why South Africa's gone with 7-1. So so essentially that is we can't really do any I don't think it'll be accurate to do too many predictions here, but essentially this is what we've got. This is what we think how we think it's going to play out. That's what I think. Scrum, kicking, and all that's going to be the main parts of the game. But now, so it's essentially that's what we have.
I do agree. They ultimately do have to play a perfect game, and I've seen South Africa as a very data-driven team, right? And this is a wet weather team, right? Because from the last game, they obviously learned that under wet weather conditions, and it is predicted to be wet, there'll be a lot of knock-ons.
Yeah, that's not good.
The scrum, and the scrum will play a huge part in that.
Yeah.
So, So shall we get into the stats now? Do a little bit
100%.
of stats analysis.
100%.
So,
I know you've been itching to get into this.
It's my job. So, yes, I have been waiting to get to the stats. Right. And one little secret I just need to let you in on is, Kumbi and I aren't just data scientists. We are aeronautical engineers.
Ooh,
and with
fancy.
that being said, we do use ratios to compare things, which
Right.
makes it right. That's actually one of the best ways to give context, because we in this particular tournament, you have people like Andre Pollard who came in late. You have other people that were arrested for certain games. So we can't just look at the totality of like the sum of certain actions. We have to look at a ratio. And yeah, that's one of the tools we have. And again, this is us coming out a second time. Look, I hope you don't feel deceived. You know, and after Kumbi is done with his masters, you know, he'll be something else. But yeah, so the first thing we're looking at is for Faf de Klerk, Andre Pollard, Damian Willemse, Richie Monga, Geordie, and Borden Barrett. We're looking at the total kicking meters they have divided by the total number of kicks from hand.
Yeah.
Right. So just starting off at the top already, Andre Pollard with 33.8. Right. In second, we have Borden Barrett. After that, we have a tie with Damian Williams and Richie Mwanga with 30.3.
Right.
Then we have Aaron Smith with 24.7. And last but not least, we have Geordie Barrett with 20.4. So obviously we can see who's kicking long and who's kicking short, right? But you know, ultimately when it comes to the kicking ratios, what are your thoughts there, Kumbi?
Yeah, I think the reason why we've done this is because essentially we've narrowed this down to every single kicker in the team just to see the style, you know, just to derive as much as we can from kicking meters versus how many kicks they're taking, just to see what kind of kicking game that these two like to engage in, right? So obviously, what we're seeing is that Andre Pollard basically kicks long. He's got more kicking meters per kick attempted, right? Which basically means that they're kicking a little bit longer than New Zealand off 10, and then New Zealand's highest kick, you know, the highest ratio for New Zealand would be Borden Barrett, which means for New Zealand, they're not really kicking off 10, they're kicking longer, off 15 when you've got your duels coming in, you know, when you've got your teams kicking back and forth. It's Borden Barrett who's kicking the ball back. I think New Zealand, because you'll notice that especially with guys like Richie Mwanga, Geordie Barrett has the shortest, the least amount of kicking meters per kick. And then Aaron Smith also has a smaller number compared to Faf. They're looking to kick shorter but higher, right? So make the kicks a little bit more contestable, which will be very beneficial under the weather. I think one of the things that they'll probably need to do is just to control themselves on the chase a little bit more. But I think in this case they want to kick a little bit shorter, where South Africa want to kick longer to put more pressure on the attack coming back. Especially just like you said, it probably is going to be raining. If you put more pressure, that means you're going to get mistakes. More mistakes is equal now we're back at the scrum, right? So you might get, you might get a little bit of profit coming off that. So I think that's very interesting, the styles of play that we can derive coming from that particular stat.
Yeah, just using ratios as tools.
100%.
This is right, and it's the beauty of having a rugby expert to help translate the stats, because all of these do have real world implications. Right, and then now we do actually see this. We do see kicking and scrummaging being the core things in this particular game, right? And obviously just based on the lineups, right? That's why, like you said, we are putting a big focus on kicking. Now, next we are just going to look at two players, right? Andre Pollard and Richie Mwanga, and we're going to look at their conversion percentages, penalty conversion percentages, and their meters made per minute, right? So just starting off with the conversions, we have 6 out of 6 for Andre, with obviously that's 100%, and then we have 18 out of 26, right? So 64% for Richie, right? Obviously, if you do a little bit of stats, it's easy to get high percentages with the lower numbers, right? 6 out of 6 is a lot easier to attain than 18 out of 28. The more kicks you make, the more you miss. But still, that's pretty impressive, because Pollard, moving on to penalty conversions, Pollard hasn't missed a kick, right? Which is a bit concerning.
That's concerning for All Blacks fans.
Right now, and if you're a South African fan, you're like, but yeah, so he has 100% kicking in penalties as well. You know, that's 3 out of 3. But so does Richie, right, with 3 out of 3. Right. So, in that particular matchup, that's going to be interesting. And then we have meters made per minute played, because obviously Andre hasn't played that many minutes. So his meters made are 0.14 meters for every minute he's played. And Richie, who's turning out to be a workhorse, has 0.84 meters for every minute played. And that is the comparison between those two, Kumbi.
Yeah. Look, I think the biggest talking point coming in to the World Cup, even as the World Cup has progressed, the focus has been Manie Lebok, right? And then now he's completely out, just like we said. That now you've got Pollard, which means basically anything that's going to be in South Africa's half. And I do apologize for the noise in the background. I think someone's having a little bit of fun in preparation for the final. Yeah, right. Yeah,
well, there's a bit of excitement. South Africa.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, there's a bit of excitement around. But so I think right now New Zealand's going to be very careful. We spoke about a perfect game, right, which is going to be very hard in the wet conditions, right? You can't drop a ball. You basically can't make any mistakes, especially in the South African half. I mean, in your own half, because anything that's kickable, especially after what we saw, the way that Andre Pollard won the game in the last game, it's going for posts. Right, so that's going to be very, they're going to need to play a perfect game. I think you also, just to speak about that quarterfinal review that we, that we did a couple of weeks ago, you had mentioned that, listen, they had no knock-ons, and we went back, we checked, and they really didn't actually have any knock-ons during that game, except for that Aaron Smith knockdown, which it really isn't technically a knock-on. They're going to need to play a perfect game, just like what they did in the quarterfinal. So there's no room for error with Andre Pollard on the field.
Yeah, he's a sniper. Yeah. Now we are just going to look at two forwards, the number 8, right, which are Audi Severe and Dwayne Vermeulen. Right. So just starting off, since we're already looking at meters per minute.
Right.
Yeah, Audi with 0.66 meters per minute and Dwayne with 0.3. Right.
Beast.
So Audi is covering twice, more than twice. And then we have defenders beaten per minute, right?
Yeah.
Now, Audi Severe has 23 out of 383, right? So that's 0.06. And Dwayne, 2 out of 301, right? Which basically averages out at 0. Right? So there, I'd say that's where the biggest the biggest changes. And then, of course, carries across the gain line. Right, for every minute. So carries across the gain line, we have 0.12 for Audi and 0.02 for Dwayne.
Right.
Kumbi chose the stats to look at this particular thing. I think Kumbi has an agenda, right? Because as I look deeper into them,
right. And it's too late to go back. Yeah, we
could have chosen something in Vermeulen's favor,
right.
But for that, to our South African fans, just blame Kumbi, right?
Right.
And
look. The thing is, I think one of the biggest things here is the fact that obviously you've got you've got Dwayne Vermeulen, very experienced, but I think he's lost a step, obviously, even since 2019, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got New Zealand's best player coming off. I think right now the most critical player for South Africa is probably going to be Pollard and like your front row and all that stuff. But I think New Zealand, one person who can lead New Zealand is going to be Audi Severe. When you've got that much explosiveness, versus. So we just wanted to compare what South Africa has, that might be comparable. I think this just, for me, it's just a comparison just to see, okay, South Africa is probably not the best team when it comes to stats, right? We also looked at meters made for Ichimawanga versus Andre Pollard and all these things. They're not the team that's going to get individual stats. However, they will get dominance as a whole forward pack. So you're always, so no matter who you try to compare against, I think it's always going to be lopsided in New Zealand's favor. But it's not that it's South Africa's ineffective or anything. I think they just work together as a pack, and not only just the 8, including the 7 on the bench. As a 15-man pack, they just they actually have the better, even though they don't have as good of a stats. Their stats aren't as good. I think the forward pack is a lot more powerful, a lot more effective. So I think that's, so I really wanted to do it just to just to show the Springbok fans how good your forward pack is. So I'm on your side here, really.
I remember how much flack you got the last time when you said something bad about South Africa.
I think we're just going to finish this off by just giving one more matchup, just the captain's matchup, right? So this is basically our matchup of the week, and it's not really a stats heavy matchup or anything. It's Sam Cane and Siya Kolisi, both captains, both flanks. These aren't two guys who are going to get a lot of stats, and the reason why we pick these guys is like the prime matchup really is because the World Cup final is not about stats. The World Cup final isn't about being, the greatest. How many meters do you get? It's the guys who put in the work. It's about margins. It's about leadership, right? So Sam Cane and Siya Kolisi, both with plus 40 tackles. Sam Cane will probably have more meters, 55 versus 28 against with Kolisi, and then more runs and all that. But I think it just speaks to the different schemes in which they play. Both are as effective as the other in their team. Both are massive leaders, and so essentially that's our matchup of the week. And as usual, it is brought to you by Adstat. So but anyway, that is this week's preview, and it goes without saying that we're looking forward to the final this week. And if you don't see me here next week, it's probably because New Zealand's lost the game, and and there's I just can't show my face in public. So but it's going to be a vibe. It's going to be really amazing.
Yeah. Okay, but guys, thank you so much for the support. And thank you. We've grown an amazing community throughout the World Cup. We just started this channel, and I feel like we've grown together. We see a lot of returning viewers and a lot of constructive comments and a lot of good dialogue in the comments, and really appreciate that. Absolutely. So as we go into our final World Cup episodes, right? Because afterwards there will be talking points.
100%.
Yeah. So as we go into that, please still join us. Let's just end this on a high. But so far I'm just thankful.
Absolutely. Yeah, and don't forget to like the video, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the review videos after the World Cup game. Fantastic. Thank you.
Cheers.